My name is Rich Madalino. I have the honor to be the Chief Administrative Officer for the Montgomery County Government. In a few minutes, you're going to hear from County Executive Mark Elrich to lay out his recommended FY27 capital budget and the next 6-year CIP. This is a bittersweet moment because after 8 years, this will be the last CIP recommendation from this administration. Before I get to the information, I want to say and welcome several very critical people who are here today. Other elected officials joining us from the Board of Education, the board president, Grace Rivera-Oven. There are so many people that deserve applause. We're going to have to either do one applaud or go through, but we've got board member Rita Montoya and board member Laura Stewart, who are also here. They are joining their employee, our superintendent, for the very first time at the launch of a full 6-year CIP, Dr. Thomas Taylor. Also from our education enterprise, we have Dr. Jermaine Williams, the president of Montgomery College. So our sheriff, Max Wee. We have lots of department directors and other senior staff from county government, but I want to give a shout out to 3 principal directors who are here for their first 6-year CIP launch as a director. Our fire chief, Corey Smedley. Our library director, Darcel Graham. And someone we just picked up, our recreation director, Gabe Albornoz. So hopefully someone will try to help him understand the CIP as he takes on the reins. So I also want to thank our new director of the Office of Public Information, Mary Anderson. So obviously putting together a CIP is a lengthy process that many people across county government have a hand in and participate in. We want to say thank you. We want to say thank you to all of the residents who took time to come out to all of the different forums, to suggest ideas, to propose projects, to support community investments, and it all starts with you. But I also want to take a moment to give a special shout out to the people who really make it possible, and that is an incredible team of people in the Office of Management and Budget under the leadership of Director Jennifer Bryant and our first Deputy Director Faisal Amin. Faisal is sitting somewhere all the way in the back. And our Capital Budget Manager, Rachel Silberman, who's delivering her very first 6-year CIP. In order to make this all happen, we also want to give a shout out to everyone from the Office of Public Information, to our Technology and Enterprise Business Solutions team, and also to General Services. This budget does not happen without the team from General Services, whether it's in costing out all the projects, coming up with great ideas, trying to convince us not to do certain things, but all the way down to the print shop who makes the books possible, and facilities who help make sure the rooms are ready to go. So thank you to all of that team, and especially to the OMB team. I think the county executive, after 8 years, came in impressed with OMB, and I'm sure after 8 years feels only more impressed with the team that is in OMB. So thank you to everyone who made the budget possible. So we are here today to go over what is in the budget, to remind people what we've been through over the last several years, including a global pandemic, construction cost escalations, 2 federal shutdowns, an affordable housing crisis, and growing homelessness in our community. But even during that time, the county has moved through and continued its long-standing, multi-decade tradition of prudent management, which has allowed us to have the flexibility to do much of the investment you will hear today. It has allowed us to put in a record amount of money for public school construction. We are expanding affordable housing. You know, just in this 8-year period under the Elbridge administration, 9,200 units of affordable housing has either been constructed or preserved. This budget, you will also see advances the bus rapid transit plan with 3 lines moving forward, including constructing the Veers Mill BRT line, which will link the 2 ends of the red line outside of the Beltway, as well as designing the central section of the Route 355 BRT. So, over the last several years, during this unprecedented times, we have delivered an amazing number of important projects across the county. The Clarksburg Fire Station, a new 6th District Police Station, the amazing Silver Spring Recreation and Aquatic Center, the Emergency Homeless Shelter on Neville Street, 10 new or rebuilt schools, including 3 high schools and 11 school additions. And I think that just scratches the surface of the things that we do for the physical plant of MCPS. We are advancing the Clarksburg Library, the Shady Grove West Library, the Western County Recreation Center, the long talked about Wheaton Arts and Cultural Center, and the Diversion Center here in Rockville. But challenges still exist. Obviously, the school system, the school board made a request of a record amount of money to the school system. The leadership of Dr. Taylor has put forward a number of very critical issues that you will hear the county executive talk about the need for our community to face. But obviously, we still have to maintain aging infrastructure. We have to build affordable housing. We have economic development to work at. We have climate challenges. And we have to make sure we have a county government ready for the future. So, again, number one cost pressure in this budget, the $1 billion increase that the school system asked for. But of course, there were increases across the board. Every building is more expensive. Every new project costs money. And the county executive had to try to balance that all within constrained revenues. So, you know, we don't have unlimited amounts of money to put in, and certainly uncertainty has built during the last several years as federal aid has decreased for a variety of things to support not just our government, but state and local governments around the country. The state needs to face some interesting issues about its support for school construction. The Moore administration has provided us with records amount of money through the Built to Learn. That's what you see with the BTL, the Built to Learn initiative. But that amount of money is coming to an end. So we have a challenge moving forward about state aid. And of course, impact taxes have declined due to a variety of things, policy decisions, which limited what was going to be taxed by the council, as well as economic conditions, which have dropped the number of new projects underway. So, and of course, the General Assembly continues, just starting yesterday, but the General Assembly is always looking at different changes to responsibilities and taxing authority for all local governments. So this is the issue that, that sums up the challenge we face over the last several years, because we have been exceedingly disciplined with the amount of debt we issue. We have held the capital budget authorization at a relatively stable number now for more than a decade. Unfortunately, the rest of the world has not decided to also hold down costs for the decade. And so you can see the gap of the top line would be, this is what it would have cost for us to continue to build at what cost $300 million in 2009 would now cost almost $600 million. Yet we have kept our budget down at roughly the $300 million to $280 million range for quite some time. That means there is a gap. We can't be expected to build the same stuff for the same amount of money over the last 16 years. So, in fact, moving forward, if the county executive had submitted a budget only to the guidelines that the county council had proposed, the $300 million number, we would be able to do little more than just build what was already in the last CIP. No new projects, not the money for the school system that they asked for. And in fact, as you look out at the final 2 years, we don't even know at this level if we would be able to even deliver on the projects, assuming inflation, that were already promised. And of course, the community is not holding steady. It is continuing to grow, to change. There are old facilities that need help, and with that, it is my pleasure to turn the podium over to County Executive Mark Elrich, who's going to run through his proposal of how we address these needs.
Thank you.
A little sip of water to get started. Thank you all for coming out this morning. And I want to thank my staff and the team in OMB, I think, who did a remarkable job. These budgets are never easy because we have a lot of people who need to be made happy. And that is always a challenging thing to do. We have a lot of work to do. And, you know, as Rich has kind of pointed out, we've been struggling to do things and not providing the means to do things that we need to do. And the school system's kind of a classic example of that. I just want to start, you know, last year we were surprised by being told they needed 700 teachers. That was an issue brewing for a decade, probably. This year we were told we need north of $2 billion for repairs. This is an issue that's been brewing for more than a decade, much more than a decade. How did we get here? Two colliding factors. One is lack of transparency from the school system by saying what they needed when they needed it, and being willing to fight for it, even if it would have been messy, because nobody wanted to do that. That was complicated by county council limits on bond funding. Because if you only put in, as we've been doing the last few years, $280 million a year, if you cut your bond funding from a peak of $340 million, and you're actually spending less than you spent in 2009, you've pretty much guaranteed that you're not going to build what you need to build. And the school system, looking at what was put in the budget, never asked for the money because they knew the council wasn't going to raise the budget. If you don't ask for it, you never get it. And it has put us in a box. This fealty to tax rates and to bond spending without regard for needs is not sustainable. And that's where we've arrived. You cannot tell the schools they can't air condition themselves. You can't say we're not fixing things. You can't let the infrastructure rot, and we let that go for far too long. So we've got challenges now. We never built the transportation we needed to be competitive, because you could never put these projects in a budget that had $280 or $300 million for capital improvements. When you see the timelines on our BRT, that is totally driven by availability of capital. There's no way it takes that long to build things. It takes that long to get money into our capital system. So we've kind of boxed ourselves into a pretty difficult situation. I'll say it's something we feel like we've reached a point that we have to deal with now. If we did nothing, if we left bond levels of what was recommended in the SAG guidelines this year, $300 million, there would be no new projects. We would possibly not have enough money in the budget to even cover the inflation adjustment over projects that are already in there. It is naive to think that if I put a project in my budget in 2020, that the cost of that project when it's scheduled to be built in 2026 is going to be the same thing. And it was never true that there's no inflation, but in our times, it's absolutely absurd to think that you shouldn't adjust your spending for inflation. Between tariffs, between inflation, between the loss of revenues to the county from the federal government and from the state government, all these challenges make it more imperative than ever that we are able to step forward and do more than we've been able to do. We have asked for increases before. We didn't get that. We are asking again for an increase. We're asking for the county to start at $340 million this year and to raise it by $10 million a year for the next 5 years. That will not fully fund the school system's request, and they know we don't have that kind of money, but I appreciate the fact that somebody actually said what you need to do. That's a breath of fresh air. So we know that we can make progress, but we're not going to be able to do the whole thing. So our proposal, as you see on the board, you can see what happens now is if we don't do anything. Oh, I got it in front of me. Never mind, I can do this. So if you don't do anything, that dotted line shows where we would be limited to. If we go to 340 and then start escalating it, then we'll be able to do we can get 85% of that money will go to the school system. The other 15% will go to things we need to do in the county government. It will not solve their problems. There is no feasible way for us to do that, but at least this gets in a position. I will continue to push for raising the bond limits above 340. When you look at how we've calculated our bonds, we actually have the ability to go higher than even I put in this budget, but we felt this is about as far as we could go in a first bite, but hopefully over the next year or so, more realistic discussions about what we need to do will prevail, and we'll get a little bit bolder about this. But this is what we are going to be able to do for educational infrastructure and for everything else in our capital budgets. So here's your overview. This is just a quick look at, where does this money go in your capital budget? And as you can see, school system between MCPS and the college is going to get about 40% of it, 39 to be accurate. Transportation is going to get 35. The county government non-transportation is 22, but that's all the buildings. That's all the things we have to fix, any new things we need to build. And MNN's, Maryland National Park and Planning is going to get about 4% of the budget. The Revenue Authority, which has has the ability to raise money on their own, also is getting about 0.2% of the budget, not a lot of money. And Housing Opportunities getting $7.5 million, which is 0.1%. So you can see a lot of these things are small. The big things are really education and transportation. And I would say both of those things are key to economic development. If we do not build the transportation infrastructure, even to begin to approach what Virginia's doing, we will continue to get clobbered by Virginia. Virginia massively invests in things that we will not do in Montgomery County. And it has cost us our ability to compete with Virginia and offer a business environment that we cannot match. They do better than we do. I'm tired of hearing everybody talk about them and not be willing to look at what they do. And I'm going to get to a slide that talks about what they do in a minute. Next slide. This is the allocation. You can see more detail on what's inside this budget. Again, transportation with the 61% just in the county government, public safety at 8%, county government at 8%, stormwater management at 7%. This is something for you guys to just think about going forward. We're doing a survey now. We've hired a hydrology firm to map the county and map the risks of flooding in the county. We're seeing more flooding. Our infrastructure is unable to deal with it. Our pipes are too small. They were built in a different era. We're going to have to go back and do some serious work. We're going to get a sense of what that work is when this report is finished, but we're going zone by zone in the county. And these investments are important, and they're also things we have to do. Health and Human Services gets about 2%. Housing and Community Development, 4%. Libraries and Rec at 6%. Recycling and Resource Management's 1%, and Conservation of National Resources, 2%. So that's the bulk of the money inside the county government. Education, largest funding level ever recommended, $2.1 billion for academic support, or 87.2% of the Board of Education's request for academic facilities. It increases local funding by $420 million, adds $282 million to that funding in the first 4 years, and that's when the needs are the greatest. One of the things that you're going to see when you start examining the school budget, for years, one of the reasons we didn't do repairs is the bulk of money was spent on capacity, because the biggest struggle in the county was growing population and the need for more capacity in the school system. We're at the point now when student population's declined for a couple of years. We're down 2,600 students this year. That's projected to continue for a while. The good news about that is it allows us not to deal with capacity issues and start focusing on repair issues. So instead of having to try to add capacity and repairs together, we're going to get some breathing space and capacity and be able to focus more on repairing the things that need to be fixed inside the school system. And this includes replacements for major capital projects, new reopening projects, significant infrastructure in HVAC, roofs, and other things. So this is, I think, really important for the school system, but it's important for everybody to understand like how we got here and what we're doing to get out of here. Because just because you made other decisions in the past does not mean you have to blindly follow them if they do not work. So we're trying to do things that we think will work. MCPS is nearly a $1 billion funding gap, and with the council-approved funding, which was an increase to $300 million, it still leaves us well short of what the school system needs. So without going above that level of funding, we would be static. We will not see the increases that we wanted to see. We'd not be able to deal with the budget requests from the school system. So, I think the council understands this is a real issue, and I think there are members of the council who understand we need to deal with it. So I'm excited about that. This could be, I think it's a pivotal moment for the county. Getting real, kind of odd that has to be a pivotal moment, but getting real about where you are and what you need to do, I think is an important thing for all of us. Next, more on the schools. I mentioned the enrollment being down, the shift in focus, and all the repairs. And so you can see the completed construction. Burtonsville Elementary School, we're finishing that. Woodward reopening, Crown High School new, Northwood High School rebuilt, and Joan Lelick Elementary School. These are significant projects in the community. And next. What we didn't include in this, we did not include the central office headquarters. Too large a project at a time when we're struggling to do repairs or replace else, we decided that wouldn't be in there. We did not support projects related to closure of Silver Spring International. We did not support a couple of the expansions of middle schools that would give them 1,500 student capacities, frankly, because middle schools really should not be that big. And we pulled all the artificial turf projects out of this budget. But we did not leave the schools without resources. We gave them enough money, not just to bring in some turf and put it over the garbage that's already over there and then be surprised when you have more garbage a year later. We actually given them enough money to rebuild the fields with drainage and all the things that you do when you're building a turf field that you intend for intense long-term use. So we're going to give them the funds, not just to put sod down, but to actually build proper fields for the turf fields they're going to replace, and for the fields that already exist they want to repair, the natural grass fields. The unallocated reduction is about $107 million, and cash increases are held when we get to the operating budget. So you'll see more when we get to the operating budget. But we feel pretty good about this. Like I said, we know we couldn't do everything that was asked for, but we appreciate working with the school system to get where we are today. I think we're in a much better place than we were, and I think we've got a path going forward that will improve. And I think we just need to have a little bit more talks about can we even go beyond that, but that's for another day. Next. So as I said, largest funding ever for education, $445 million, an increase of 34.9 over the last capital budget from Montgomery College. We advanced the renovation of the Germantown Student Affairs Building and planning work for the 4th campus. And that's an important campus. It's the east side of the county. There's absolutely a racial equity issue in this county. And building that campus is going to bring Montgomery College and its programs. And if you don't understand how amazing Montgomery College is, you should look at the stuff they do there. Between them and USG, we have a pretty major educational institution in this county that I think sometimes goes unrecognized and unappreciated. It is a lot more than you think, and it's important for us to continue to support it. We've increased level of funding for levels of effort projects, put funds in for escalation to match additional state aid and support for college-wide road and parking lot projects. Roads are a big issue in the county, and one of the things we also struggle with funding as much as we should. There is a $41 million over 6-year reduction in GEO bonds. And again, cash increases you'll see during the operating budget. Next. Transportation, major investments in mass transit, largely focused on BRT expansion. Highway maintenance, there's never enough money for highway maintenance. Everybody who lives in Montgomery County knows there's never enough money for highway maintenance. When I was on the council, and the first time they talked to us about our highway maintenance, road maintenance capacity, it was like we're on a 100-year cycle. Roads don't last 100 years. Getting out of that cycle is really difficult. We fell way behind over the years, and we continue to struggle to catch up. All of that's just limited by our ability to find money in the capital budget. We're still expanding pedestrian facilities and bikeways, traffic improvements. Bridges are like no-brainers. If bridges are failing, you have to replace them. Parking and roads, they're in the budget. You can see the amount of money there. But transportation's total is $2.2 billion for transportation. Next. As I talked about bus rapid transit, this is the system that was actually approved by Park and Planning. It is, but it's a system that over 10 or 12 years we've built absolutely nothing of. The only thing we have is something on Colesville Road, which is not in dedicated lanes, and which is in mixed traffic from New Hampshire Avenue into Silver Spring, which means it goes nowhere fast. And so I have always refused to call it bus rapid transit because I can't use the word rapid in good conscience. So this budget will help it become a bus rapid transit line. And it gets us into Veers Mill Road, and it gets us into the central part of Wisconsin Avenue 355. It's progress. We could go faster if we had more bonding capacity. This is another project where the speed of the project is determined by our ability to fund things. And we get not much from the state, and who knows what we're going to get for the federal government. God forbid we label anything DEI. Kiss of death with this administration. Next. So, transportation, BRT lines, about $262 million. Lake Forest Transit Center, really important for us. If we're going to run up 355 and get eventually to Clarksburg, we need a transit center in Gaithersburg, and that's going to be a big deal. I mentioned phase 2 design for Route 29 BRT. $240 million for maintenance and rehabilitation of county roads, 16.5 for bridges, 4.3 for sidewalks. It leverages federal money, which has been still there for county bridges, and you can see the list of bridges that are in this project. They are across the county, and they serve many different communities. Next. Affordable housing, $160 million over 6 years. We've built more than 9,200 units, built or preserved since FY19. That's a lot of housing focused on affordable housing. And it's a lot more than what 15% would have been of market housing. We've gone well beyond the market housing. We only get 12.5% to 15% of a typical market development, otherwise known as diddly squat. Think about it this way. If you build 50 units and I get 12.5%, what am I looking at? 7 units? Not much, 8 units? Not enough to deal with any of our problems. We've gone over and above. We've done projects that are 100% affordable and broadly affordable, and we're going to continue to do that. We've got some really good nonprofit partners we work with, and we do these things together. The county's invested $577 million from our finance budget to support affordable housing, and major decisions on additional funding will be considered, again, when we get to the operating budget. So this is just part one of our 2 great budget presentations. That will come in March. Next. Economic development. The University of Maryland has opened up the Institute for Health Computing in Pike and Rose off of Executive Boulevard. What started as 30-something people in the first year is now about 150 people. It is doing what we hoped it was do, which is partner with drug companies in the pursuit of drug development and advancing patient care. It is one of those things that I focused on because Montgomery County is number 3 life sciences center in the country, and you wouldn't know it. We are like almost invisible. People in the life sciences center, when they go to conferences and they say they're in Shady Grove Life Sciences, it means nothing to anybody around the world. On the other hand, if you said I'm in Boston, San Francisco, the Raleigh Triangle, everybody knows what that is. We need people to know who we are, and Montgomery County never had graduate level research. This is the first genuine graduate level research in Montgomery County. And the best thing about this is most of the time when you do research at the university level, you have professors who are focused on internally on what their favorite research projects are. This is externally focused research. This is AstraZeneca coming down and saying, we're working on a breast cancer drug. We'd like your assistance with AI to help us figure out what is the right path to follow. So the purpose of this research institute is outwardly focused to help the industry that is our largest industry in Montgomery County, except for the federal government, which that will change apparently, to make this what it should be. And that's really, really important to us. So we're putting money in there along with the state to transform. They're going to build the Signature building on top of the North Bethesda. See, I said it right this time, Rich, not White Flint. The North Bethesda Metro Station, it's going to be a signature project there. And we believe it's going to attract more and more life sciences companies to this. Cambridge was kind of like my inspiration model. For years, all life sciences was done in office parks. You go to Cambridge, you see life sciences being done in the city. And when I saw that, when I saw labs going up 7, 8 stories and not spread out over low-rise buildings, we don't have a lot of room for low-rise buildings in the county. So being able to go up is a big boon to the lab industry. So I'm very excited about what's going to happen in North Bethesda. And I'm also I'm also supporting and excited about what's happening in Viva White Oak, which is a $2.8 billion development that we're supporting through tax increment financing, what this county has never done before. This gives us a tool to develop and provide infrastructure in a place that if that was on the county budget, there is no way that project would fit in the county budget. It would be one of those things that we'd say, if we could do it, this would be great for Montgomery County. So I changed our historic thinking in the county where we refused to do TIFs and said, this is a tool we need to use. We need to use it right because there are good TIFs and bad TIFs. Sometimes people get, I would say, taken advantage of when they do a TIF. We made sure we did a TIF with guidance from people we were their client and we were employing them rather than letting somebody else come to us and tell us how to do this. So we worked with the developer. I think we've got a good project. We've got a potential project that is in White Flint, where the learners want to talk about a TIF. That would get that project off the ground. So we've got lots of possibilities, and we're going to continue to build on those possibilities. Viva White Oak is actually going to bring thousands of jobs and housing units to the east side of the county, and this is something that the east side has been looking for. That is a part of the county we've historically neglected. Probably in retrospect or hindsight, we should have treated the 29 corridor like we treated 355. We should have gone from there to Columbia and said, this is going to be a development corridor. We should have gone down 355 like we did. We should have had 2 major development corridors. It sits on a ton of traffic and people going through it. We could have done this differently. Planning certainly could have conceived of this differently. But for years, that side of the county was just neglected and assumed everything's going to be on the west. Now we got some things on the east, and I'm very excited about it. Next, environment and climate. Also forbidden topics. But with that said, we have net zero facilities going to the White Flint Fire Station, 4th District Police Station, West County Rec Center, Clarksburg Library, and the Justice Center. We've invested in $36.9 million in energy conservation in our own buildings. The new transit and maintenance depot is going to be $40 million. Thankfully, less than what we originally thought it was going to be by a lot. I was having a hard time swallowing the other number. This is a number we can deal with. And so I'm excited. You need this in order to have a BRT system. If you can't service the buses, it doesn't work. We've got money in there to acquire electrical and hydrogen fuel cell buses. I can say, we've got 2 hydrogen projects, one of them funded by federal money, probably the last federal money for 3 or 4 years. It'll go to a hydrogen project, but it's very exciting because we can take natural gas and extract the hydrogen from it and empower our buses. That's important because Hydrogen-powered buses have a longer range than battery-powered buses. You can put them on our lines and not have to have two buses operate a line during the day. You can do it with a single bus instead of two. So it's a good project, and I'm very excited about it. And I'm also very happy with the comprehensive flood management. It's a good investment. It's an important investment. And frankly, this is the tip of the iceberg. This is just the investment in studying and doing a little bit of work. When we get down to what pipes you've got to change, which are underneath your streets, then we're going to be in a different situation. I think it's at Arlington or Alexandria where they have a school site where they basically put a huge swimming pool underneath a ball field, and that is used to capture water that's diverted from the streets so it doesn't create flooding. It would not surprise me if some of our projects ultimately are giant swimming pools underneath parking lots and other fields. So stay tuned. Fortunately, it's not in this budget, but it is inevitably coming. Next. Culture and recreation, you're getting 2 new libraries, Shady Grove and Clarksburg. I'm really proud of the decision we made on Clarksburg because the development there was not going to build the library that was originally envisioned. They were going to build a small library. We realized for the size of the population up there, we were building an inadequate library. And so we went back and rethought our decision, and we're building a proper library for Clarksburg. So it's a little bit bigger than we originally envisioned, but it's important. We're also revitalizing Damascus, and I've heard from so many people in Damascus about their library, Silver Spring Library and the Twin Brook Library. Recreation revitalization, again, Damascus is getting some attention here. They felt pretty well neglected for a while. This starts to deal with some of these issues. Bauer Drive Community Center and Upper County Community Rec Center. And in Wheaton, very exciting, the Wheaton Arts and Cultural Center is being built in conjunction with a large affordable housing partnership and the partner that we're working with there. And then there's the Western County Rec Center. So lots of good stuff happening in culture and recreation. Public safety, $40 million to co-locate the 4th District Police Station and the Maryland National Park and Planning Police Headquarters. $40 million is not all of it. It's what's in this part of the CIP. There's a bigger part of it, hopefully the same size part, but I'm going to guess it's going to be a bigger part of it. That's going to probably come, it's going to come in the out years beyond this. We've got $44.2 million to build a fire station in White Flint, partly because we're acquiring land for affordable housing. Construction design of the new Justice Center to house multiple services, and there's 14.8 to replace the breathing equipment used by firefighters and 4.4 million for expired police body armor. These are things we have to do. They don't come up every year, but they're cyclical. When they come up, you cannot put firefighters out there with breathing apparatus that does not work. And so this is one of those things, it's like it goes into the budget whether you like it or not. You find room for it. There are some things that could be there otherwise. This is there because it has to be there. Next. We're working to maintain our existing buildings, ADA compliance, HVAC replacement, roof replacement, fire stations, ABS conveyor system upgrade, ABS in case you don't know, alcohol and beverage services. That's how those precious bottles we have in the county get to you. They go on a conveyor belt first. And remember, ABS is a net revenue generator for Montgomery County. If I got rid of ABS, your taxes go up. There is no replacement from the revenue that ABS generates. So it's kind of like a sacred cow, and it's worth being in the business. And we have 5.8 for elevator improvements in the Judicial Center. This is a public safety thing for the judges because of what's happened in the country, and judges have been attacked. This is an additional safety measure to keep them safe in that building. And we have money in here for improving the processing, Shady Grove processing facility at the transfer station. We are looking at a bigger project than the transfer station. You will hear about that probably in a couple of months. We've put the long haul contract out for bid. We've talked to the council. We're not going to try to move the long haul contract without letting them know what the actual solution for the waste station is, because nobody wants to commit the long haul unless they know there's an out of long haul. Long haul is expensive. It still doesn't solve the environmental problems. It's not environmentally friendly. So we need to show the council what the light on the other side of this tunnel is, so before we ask them to actually support the long haul. But we'll be going back to them with this hopefully this spring. And next, other outside agencies. You see Maryland National Park and Planning, it gives them $280 million. It's a little $6.4 million less in geo bonds than before. Fully funded WSSC Water. Housing Opportunities Commission is getting $7.5 million that they requested. And the Revenue Authority has new projects to install electric charging. Fortunately, they are a self-financing facility. They actually can borrow money and pay for it off the revenues they get. Next. Opportunities. We have opportunities in the county. Go ahead. Okay. So we're going to start talking again about not new taxes on top of residents, but about restructuring our tax system. And you guys have heard me talk about this before. This system was designed in the 50s and 60s. Montgomery County was strictly a residential community. We were the bedroom for federal workers in the District of Columbia. And to be blunt, we were the bedroom because DC integrated. The federal workers worked in the District of Columbia before 1960, largely. They moved out of the District of Columbia because DC integrated their schools. And they came to Montgomery County because we advertised ourselves, we're still segregated. Not something to be proud of. We were segregated until 1967 when the county actually eliminated the covenants, said the covenants on property were not enforceable. The covenants on property said if you own property in Montgomery County, you cannot rent or sell to a black or a Jew. And depending where else you live, they added other ethnic groups in different neighborhoods. So that was Montgomery County up till 1967. There's a reason why the black population went from 30% in 1870 to 3% in 1960, because they couldn't grow in this county. Their families had to break up because on the little pieces of land they managed to get in the agricultural area, you can only divide a farm so many times among the heirs until what's left for any one heir is too small to earn a living off of. So for the black community, their future for almost 100 years lay outside of Montgomery County. So that's our history, and I think it's important for everybody to recognize that. We've changed. We're no longer strictly a bedroom community. Now we're trying to diversify our economy from not just being a federal, relying on them as their major employer, but actually getting into things like having a number 3 life sciences center. How do we drive this thing to make it as big as possible? And my hope is to get to number 2 and eventually number 1. This is a path we can do. The good news about Montgomery County, as much as we think everything's expensive here, we're cheaper than Boston for residential and commercial rents. We're cheaper than San Francisco for both of those things. We're cheaper than San Diego for both of those things. We have real competitive advantages. And making investments in life sciences will help us take advantage of those. But we need to make more modern investments. And our biggest issues, and the things that drive people to come here, are 2 things. They come here for schools. They come here for the opportunities. They don't come here for transportation. Our transportation system, I would say this, ride-on system is great, but the ride-on system is seriously limited. It is primarily for non-choice riders, for the people who have a choice of driving rather than taking a ride-on buses. Ride-on buses are stuck in traffic for the most part, so they're not the fastest way to be here. Your car will pass ride-on buses as you go to work. That's why we're looking at focusing on bus rapid transit, because if the trip to work is equal to the time in a car and a bus, you start picking up choice riders. And so we've got to build a system to attract choice riders. Otherwise, everybody's going to be in cars, and if everybody's going to be in cars, we don't have the road network to handle it, and people will go someplace else, like Virginia. So we've got to figure out how do we raise revenues in order to build the infrastructure that we need. And Virginia has done this not by taxing their residents, but by taxing commercial property where they're doing development. The cheapest place to build in Montgomery County is the most desirable place to build in Montgomery County, which would be at places like Bethesda, urban areas with transportation. In Virginia, the most expensive place to build in Virginia are the same places, the places that are developed with transportation. Virginia understood that the way you make this place pop is to provide the transportation so the business community has confidence that you can get the workers there. Montgomery County took the approach, and this goes back to the planning board, who I blame for many things, but the planning board and the council engineered a tax structure that made Bethesda the cheapest place to build, where it's actually the most expensive place to provide infrastructure, and made the developments we've approved outside of Bethesda and other parts of the county the most expensive places to build, even though they provide the least, or they provide less of a burden on our system than Bethesda does. So if we want Bethesda to pop, you got to move people to Bethesda. If we want our areas that we want economically developed, we want them to work, you've got to provide the infrastructure to make that possible. That's what Virginia did in 2013. The council there and the developers went to the Virginia General Assembly, which was totally run by Republicans, House, Senate, and Governor, all Republicans, and got the authority to raise taxes on commercial property in special taxing districts in Northern Virginia. And when I show you the chart of what they do, it's not like a little difference compared to Montgomery County. Next one. So we're submitting a proposal in March to address congestion. We're going to be proposing our first special taxing districts in Montgomery County. We're also going to work at the state legislative level to try to get legislation from the state legislature that would give the county only the authority. We've asked the council, please support getting the authority. You will not get a finished bill. It will not dictate how you tax. It'll just give the authority to create the districts. We need to have that discussion. And we need to raise money from commercial properties that will benefit major transportation improvements. So what's the next slide? My favorite slide in the whole universe. This is actually my favorite slide in the whole universe. So people always say, like, well, my God, Mike, if you raise taxes, people are going to go to Frederick County. Take a look at that chart. You can go to Frederick County. You will pay $1.11 property taxes in Frederick County. You pay $2.5 in Montgomery County. You're not going to go to Frederick County. You could go to Howard County. Housing prices very similar to Montgomery County housing prices. You will pay $1.33, 30 cents more in Howard County. I'm not worried about losing people to Howard County. You could go to Fairfax County. If you're residential property, you're going to be paying $1.15. You're going to be paying a food tax, a car tax, and a bunch of other things that makes you roughly equal to what you pay in Montgomery County. But if you're commercial property in Fairfax County anywhere, you're paying $1.28 because they have a 12.5-cent tax on every square inch of commercial property to build transportation. 12.5 cents on every square inch. What does Montgomery County have? Zero. Nothing with that intentionality. I'll talk about something that's not on this slide. In Fairfax County, they have a business tax, something that does not exist in Montgomery County. They get $200 million a year from that tax. I have no tax that does that. So when people tell you that people are going to Virginia because the tax burden is less, it's a bunch of crap. They're going to Virginia because Virginia builds infrastructure, it makes investments in things that business wants, and it says, we're open for business, we're going to move your workers, and we're serious about that. That is the opposite of what Montgomery County does. Montgomery County says, we're not going to build anything unless you get money from the federal government or the state government. I went years on the council where people said, we're not going to do this because then the state will never give us any money. It was a brilliantly successful plan because the state never gave us any money anyway. So we not only don't get our own money, we don't get the state's money. We have shot ourselves in the foot for a couple decades. It's amazing we have toes left. So we've done this enough, it's time to make some serious changes. That's what we're proposing. If you look at the rest of the chart there, you see Prince George's County, $1.37. Their plight is different than ours. They have very little commercial, so but they still have a school population that's expensive to educate, like ours. They also, their property values are significantly lower. For them to raise the same amount of money that we raise off our property, they need a higher rate. I don't envy them their situation. They're working hard to try to diversify their economy as well. But without significant commercial property, this is one of the consequences. It winds up on residents. Reston, Virginia, their starting tax for residents is $1.22. So 20 cents higher than us. Their commercial rate, $1.49. So I don't see our guys running to Virginia for taxes. And my favorite place, Washington, D.C. Their tax rates for residents are 85 cents on residential property. Why are they 85 cents? Because if you have property worth $10 million in D.C. or more, you're paying $1.89. That would be 86 cents higher than Montgomery County. If your property is worth 5 to 10 million, you're paying $1.77. And if your property is worth 2 to 5 million, you're paying $1.66. That's what businesses pay in the district. I believe you can go downtown in DC and see a bunch of cranes going up and people building things in the district, despite paying way more than they pay in Montgomery County. So people who want to tell you the taxes are the thing that drive development, that's not the taxes. It's the infrastructure. It's the things you do to make people want to be there. We've done one very important thing. We built a school system where people say, I want to be there. If I'm an exec, we would pitch this. When you want to be an exec, you'd say, come to Montgomery County. Your folks can go to some of the best schools in this country. That's important to a lot of people. But we failed on the transportation front in making investments where we should. So we've got ourselves halfway there. We need to go the rest of the way there. Next. These are our contacts. So you can get a hold of Rachel, raise your hand. And blame all this on her, and Veronica, who's over there also, right? I can't see her through. Anyway, we've got a great team. You know, I'm going to answer some questions now. Hopefully you got a better understanding of what we're going to do. We'll be back on March 15th or 13th. I think 13th. No, 13th for a reason. No, we're working on it.
Early March.
Early March we'll be back. And we'll be talking about the operating budget. And the operating budget, we're going to be talking about challenges there. But this is our set of challenges for today. So thank you all for coming, and I'll take any questions anybody has out there. From the reporters, yes.
I was going to ask you.
Go ahead. Oh, yeah, take the.
Okay. Josh Chapin with Channel 7. Thanks for having us. How do you remedy all that with listening to the governor? I know you were there at the State House yesterday making these asks, large asks, which are needed clearly, but
Yep.
he doesn't, you know, where do you come down there?
Look, to me, like, we control our own fate. If we can survive a total lunatic in Washington and still figure out a path forward, we can find out a path forward if the governor wants to do this right thing but is struggling with the same kind of constraints that we're struggling with. So we'll work with them. But, you know, Virginia did not rely on the state to build their transportation system. Virginia made the decision, because they were facing what we were in 2012 and before, that they were not going to get the money from the state to build it. And it's either we build it or no one builds it. No one builds it. Tyson's Corner is going to stay 2 crappy shopping centers and no economic future. They made a decision for what kind of future they wanted, and then they did what they needed to do to get there. We do not need the state to do some of this stuff. And in fact, one of the reasons that Virginia has a lower commercial tax, nice factoid, they have lower commercial tax because they offloaded a ton of expenses onto local government. So if you looked at a chart that was done for us, and also the district does for itself, you'll see that Virginia does, in fact, in a chart that stacks up taxes, Virginia has a lower corporate tax rate than Montgomery County. They've got a line of taxes that do not exist in Montgomery County. When you take the total tax burden, Montgomery County comes out pretty well. When you take actually we're lower than that. When you take only the commercial tax, which is what the ranking agencies that rank jurisdictions on their tax rate, they rank them by their corporate tax. They don't plug in what are the local taxes. And Virginia's not the only state that has low corporate taxes, but then has other ancillary taxes that apply. So the governor's in the situation he's in, the legislature's gonna go as far as they can go. We've got our own path that we can make progress on. We're gonna try to make progress.
Is there something, is there one thing that, I mean, I can hold it if you
Yeah.
want. This is the ask, obviously, right? This is, people realize that, so is there something you can lose? I hate to kind of phrase it that way, but they come back with a different number. Is there something here that we can live without? Obviously, the schools and the transportation, obviously not, but where do you make cuts
So
if you need
there's some-
to?
Well, we'll make cuts. I did this last year. I said, look, we put through a budget thinking that it's as normal as it appears to be at the moment you put the budget together. If they bring down cuts, whether it's state or federal, we've got to figure out how we're going to adjust it. The federal, I could give you a federal cut that scares the hell out of me. They propose cutting $7.5 million out of services to prevent homelessness, rapid rehousing. And so what it would affect us, 500 households, 800 people would be out on the street in a blink of the eye. So the county is going to face a really difficult decision. If that goes through, do I just put 500 families on the street? Or does the county decide to plug that hole? My inclination is to try to figure out how to plug that hole. Because one thing about the extensive services the county has, we manage our social problems in a way where a lot of people get a lot of help. That is way different, for example, than what I just saw when I came back from Los Angeles, where their social problems is spilled out in the street to a level that it's really, can be very unpleasant just to walk around, even in the heart of a business district. So our investments in social programs in the community, I think help us keep this county holding together and help people be comfortable with what we do here, because they know in total, it makes this a more civilized place to live for everybody. So the governor's gonna do what he's gonna do. We will figure out alternatives. We'll figure out what we gotta do when the feds come down. Our asks are pretty simple. I mean, I'm asking for, on economic development, when we do a TIF, we want the state to include sales tax, which they do in DC. Why it's important is it speeds up the payback of the TIF loan, which means that the county and the state, particularly the county, get the full income taxes off those properties sooner. And when you're in a TIF, those income taxes go to pay for the infrastructure that you bonded. When you throw in the sales tax, the speed of repayment is much faster, which means the money comes back into our coffers faster, which lets us expand. That's a pretty simple ask. We're going to ask the state to give us special taxing districts where you can say the district is a half mile on either side of a BRT line and only the commercial property. For us to do what we're going to do, we're drawing squiggly lines along the transportation routes and trying to draw out every commercial. It is cumbersome, it is ridiculous, and if we had the authority to do that, it would be very straightforward. And we need the council to support asking the state, just for the authority. But the bill would not come and prescribe what Montgomery County does. It would only give us the authority to do that. We're asking them to look differently at the per pupil spending, because, and I meant to talk about this earlier, if you go by per pupil spending and I drop, say, 3,000 students, and say over 5 years I drop 10,000 students, I'm going to be taking a large hit on per pupil spending. You're not losing so many students that actually you have fewer classrooms. The thing that drives spending is the teacher in the classroom. That's 80, 90% of the budget over there. So if reductions in population don't result in being able to shrink the number of classrooms you need, your spend stays the same. Our formula is driven by population, not by the number of classrooms that you need. And so one of the things that we'll lobby for is, A, you gotta have a realistic, not just targets, you gotta have requirements for class size. So the school systems can't cheat and overcrowd the schools, and so people like us can't massage how this is done in a way that's convenient. So you gotta get real numbers, and then you've gotta say, this is how you're gonna fund us. If I have to have 20 classes in a building, even if I lost 40 kids, then I need 20 classrooms in a building. And we're going to pitch for it. And the good thing is, everything I talked about, we're in this with other counties, even the special taxing districts. Because not only are we're not the only county that's totally dependent on the state for doing major transportation projects. Every other county in the state, because of the way they set it up, can't do anything unless the state does something. So we're going to have friends, including in some Republican counties. This is truly cross-partisan issue. And so we may get some help on this.
Hi, Chaylee Jacoby with Bethesda Today. My question is about some of the new projects. I'm assuming that for some of them, there will be an accompanying request to the state, but I just am wondering if you can speak to that a little bit.
So which new projects? Some things I can get money from the state from, some would be.
Sure. I mean, I'm particularly wondering about maybe the new police station, Lake Forest Transit Center, things that are, primarily going to serve the county, but,
So we'll ask.
okay.
There is some bonding authority that comes out of legislators. Legislators have been helpful in the past. And, we've had projects and they've helped get bonds that help support those projects. They do as much as they can do. They're limited by what the state has. But we have people we can work with on the legislature. They've done very well for us. And so I know if we've got projects in there, you rarely get everything for the project, but, I think White Oaks actually, Burtonsville actually is a good example of it. Because we got multiple grants from the state as a result of Craig Zucker and the whole delegation up there that said this is important to us, and they were able to get state grants from the state. So we'll continue to apply for as many grants as we can get.
Last question.
One last question.
Thank you. Mr. County Executive, how would you answer this in simplest terms for the average resident of Montgomery County? What exactly are they going to see in their paychecks if all of these proposals are accepted?
None of these proposals will affect paychecks. So what else, what are you thinking about? I mean,
How is this going to impact them
That's
on a
financial-
daily basis?
If we get special taxing districts, this is not going to affect people. My goal, frankly, would be, in my dream world, I would construct the system closer to DC's system, where you actually lower the tax rates, and then for residents, and focus the taxes on places where you're developing. DC's tax is not a tax on it's not all on everybody, it's graduated. So we try to minimize the impact on small businesses and focus on where we're doing development. Development districts let us do that. So that would be helpful to us. If we get more state funding, obviously, or if they don't make the cuts, for example, if I don't have to backfill cuts to the schools, then that's something that's not going to show up in people's tax burdens. So those kind of things would make a difference. We're trying to minimize the impact on individuals, focus on the folks who can most afford it. In my dream world, the state legislature would basically look at income tax on the very highest earners and be blunt about my rationale. That group of people voted for somebody who told them he was going to shift services from the federal government to the state. Surely these people aren't naive, so if the federal government's not doing it and paying for it, and he's going to shift it to the state, somebody's going to pay for it. And I believe pretty strongly the people who should pay for it are the people who have these massive tax cuts from the federal government. Why would I drop this on average people in Montgomery County so the people who got massive tax cuts can, wallow in their wealth while the rest of the people have to struggle to pay for things in this county? We ought to do it fairly. And I believe in progressive taxation. This is a chance to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you all.